Hello, everybody. This is KCSB-FM in Santa Barbara, 91.9 on your radio dial. My name is Kian Zamuda, and you are listening to Meet Your Mentors, where we talk with faculty and staff here at UCSB about who they are, what they do, and what life at UCSB is all about. So today we have a very special guest with us, as always. She is from the Department of Communication here at UCSB. Please welcome Dr. Dolly Mullin. Thank you for being here, Professor.
Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem. Thank you. So just to start with, we want to get to know you a little bit. So if you could tell us a little bit about what courses you teach here and what they entail.
I teach my big one, the 500-student one, twice a year. That's Introduction to Communication, or Com 1, as we call it. I also teach a couple of the other pre-major communication courses, Com 88, which is Research Methods, and Com 89, which is Introduction to Communication Theory. And then I also do one graduate level seminar that's basically for training our teaching assistants.
Cool. And we have a lot of teaching assistants. That must be a very important class for them. And so that's very nice. And then second of all, where did you study and what did you study in your undergrad and graduate career?
I did my undergrad at UCLA, and I was a communication studies major there, which is what they call it there. I also studied abroad in Scotland my junior year while I was there. And then I actually came to UCSB to do my master's and PhD in the same Department of Communication here, and then just got stuck and never left. And so I took a teaching position here, and I had been a TA here for many years while I was a grad student. And then just as I was finishing up, this position opened up, and I sneaked right in and never looked back.
Got in and got it on lock. Yeah.
You bet.
And you mentioned that before we were talking, you mentioned that you went to Scotland and then you did radio there, and then you came back and did radio at UCLA. That's correct?
I did, yes. In Scotland, it was the University of Stirling, and there was a radio station was located in this little castle, believe it or not, that was on the campus. And so I had a show. It was a goofy show, a mix of all kinds of things. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun to do that. And so when I got back, then I looked it up at UCLA, which was much more intimidating because that campus is so huge. And so when I got back, then I ended up doing a show at 3 a.m. With, I'm sure, very few listeners. And that had a much stricter playlist and all that. But it was a lot of fun, so I enjoyed it. And great experience.
I understand the struggle. 5 a.m. Mondays.
I know,
It's a lot of fun.
I think in Scotland the signal was even weaker, so I'm not sure anybody heard it, but it was still fun.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. And so I'm glad that you're here. You understand the radio, and that's pretty cool. And just before our first break, do you have any cool hobbies you'd like to share with us?
Well, I have a new one this year. My standard ones are, say, I like to do hiking and all that, and I love the wildlife and learning about that too. And I still do that too. But my new one this year is that I just became a beekeeper. My husband and I have 2 hives we started this summer, honeybees, that is. And so it's an overwhelming learning curve. Totally different, never done this before, but it's fascinating. They're amazing little creatures. And so our hope is just to keep them alive. We'll see if we get honey later, but right now it's just keeping them alive, through the winter and dealing with all the issues that come up with them too. But it's been a great experience so far. So
that's really cool. So you have you have hives like in your backyard?
In the backyard, yeah.
And then so you let them grow, and then like when you go out there, you're in like the full gear.
I got the full suit.
And then and then how long does it take for them to produce, I don't know, as much honey as you want to collect?
Well, they only produce when there's a nectar flow, which means flowers are blooming that they get the nectar from, and that's around here probably late winter into the spring, depending if we get any rain. And if we keep having drought conditions like this, they may not produce any extra honey, because you can only take honey that's extra, that's surplus for them. You have to leave them honey because they live on it. But if they start producing a lot, then you just keep adding another box of these frames that they draw out comb on, and they fill it all up and cap it off, and then you harvest it. Which we haven't done yet, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, good luck. I hope you get some. Mm-hmm. All right, so that about takes us to our first break. And before we go to that break, we're going to play some music in lieu of Dr. Mullin's favorite music genres. And I was wondering if you could tell us what those are and why they are your favorite genres.
Well, I've got a bunch, probably. I like sort of 60s and 70s era classic rock, which is there's a lot of different things in there too. That influence probably comes a lot from my husband because he's just a music nut. And
Really?
so back when we've been together for a long, long time, but back when we were first dating, he would quiz me on how many members of the Byrds could I name, and things like that. So I was well educated by him on that, and the Beatles and all that. And so some of my favorite music comes from what I've grown accustomed to with him, like the Beach Boys. Pet Sounds is one of my favorite albums all time, and Smile and that. But it just also the stuff I listened to. I picked up a lot when I was in Scotland too. So an appreciation for a lot of Celtic music, whether it's got the punk edge to it or just the traditional stuff. And then some, late 70s going into the 80s, slightly punk like Blondie or heading into New Wave. And so I think we talked earlier about ELO and some of those bands. And so, but so all that whole era of everything from 60s all the way through 80s or so, I think is kind of big.
That's awesome. The variety of genres is great. I love it. So, cool. So that takes us to our first break, and we're going to play a song for you, a Celtic song. This is White City by the Pogues, and I think you're going to enjoy it. So we'll be right back after this.
The parties and the fugs, can I gamble on the dogs? Can I gamble on the dogs not long ago? I torn up ticket stubs from 100,000 mugs. Now washed away like dead dreams in the rain, and the cupboard's going up and they're putting down the pubs. It's just another bloody rainy day. Of my dreams, I spring and skeleton skins. Like an ass, you just disappeared from view, and a hair upon the wire has been burned upon your pyre. Like a black dog that once raced up from Chapter.
All right, we are back. This is KCSB-FM in Santa Barbara, 91.9 on your radio dial. You're listening to Meet Your Mentors with Dr. Dolly Mullin. And we are talking about communication, and we just finished talking about some of her hobbies and where she studied. She's a professor of communication here at UC Santa Barbara, and right now we are going to get into the main subject of this interview, which is communication. So, Professor, could you tell us exactly what communication is?
Well, we do spend a full lecture on that in Com 1, so I won't do all that here, of course.
Okay, yeah.
But the short version is that what we study is how people create and transmit messages and understand messages. And that can be whether it's in an interpersonal relationship or in an organization or making small groups making decisions. or enjoying mass media, pop culture, or creating those pop culture messages too, persuading others. All those different contexts are part of the field of communication. So it's a very broad field. But what they have in common is all using these messages and trying to study how we understand those and how we use those in our lives.
Awesome. And then, so that's communication, singular, and then there's communications, plural, which is a completely different.
Yes, we're sticklers for that in our program because we are without the S on the end, and that's because without the S, it's the study of communication as a phenomenon, as what I was just describing. We usually add the S on when we're talking about things like the actual physical technological side of things, like bandwidth, and so I use the example that Verizon is a communications company. They are not the study of how humans actually use the technology. And we certainly talk about technology a lot in our field and study those and how people interact with things like social media and all that. But we don't call it communications unless you're somebody who actually installs the phone lines or tries to increase them or regulate them.
I see. So does communications, plural in a way, like allow for a variety of new communication? Is that?
Yes, I guess it does. Sure, because all of the different forms of the communications technologies that we use are how we actually get the communication part done with each other, whether that's face-to-face or over the phone or texting or on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube.
You can count them all.
You know, all of
or
that.
Or probably not.
Yeah, and we study what people do with all of those things.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, and I bet, as we have more social media, the field of communication is just going to grow because communications is growing. And
certainly.
Yeah, that's good. You have a growing field, and it's amazing. Cool. So that's a little bit about communication. And then I also wanted to ask you about some research you've done in the past.
Yes. Well, when I first started, my research area was in the mass communication area, media effects, so how people understand messages that they watch on television, things like that, but particularly with an eye toward what they found offensive in some cases, and then how the attempts by the government to regulate that may or may not violate First Amendment issues. So I was very much interested in those. But as the years went on, and I'm still interested and follow that, but once I was hired in the position I'm in now, which is a teaching position, that's not doing the active research program that I had when I was a graduate student. And so what I've moved into now is doing research that's more directly related to the teaching side of things. So we just started in our department, for example, an assessment project. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but every program on campus has a set of learning outcomes that we would like our majors to have. Yes. And the tricky part of that, though, is not having the outcomes we want them to have, but trying to figure out whether they've achieved them or not. So we've begun a series of projects to assess that. And we're doing everything from looking at across our curriculum, what our courses do, what the faculty in our course who teach our courses are trying to accomplish. And then we're also going to be looking at student work to see what parts of it there seem to be getting really well and what parts not. And that helps us to improve our curriculum and our program. And so I'm actively involved in that project.
Very cool.
And then the other thing that I tend to do work on is the textbook that I use in my Intro to Communication course, which is a different style of writing than the traditional research writing that I had been doing in producing research, because writing for a textbook is writing directly for students. So it's much more closely related to how I lecture and how I teach. And so that's been a really interesting project because I have to look up all the most, of course, current research on all this to keep the book current. I mean, that's what I do in my teaching anyway. But to be able to use that in the book, I have to make sure across all the different areas, even ones that are outside my own expertise, that I can bring all of that in a way that's really understandable for students.
Cool. And then what are some of the most prominent or important things to keep in mind when you're talking to someone else to make sure that you communicate effectively?
I think one of the most important things that you can learn is who you're actually speaking to or to whom you're speaking. Understanding your audience is huge. And I use audience broadly. I mean, if you're talking on a mass media basis, it's harder to know who your audience is in that case because you're talking about a diverse group of people out there that you can't see. So if you're trying to plan an advertising campaign or a political campaign, you've got to know who they are so that you can use the kinds of messages that are effective with them. But the same goes when you're talking one-on-one with your roommate, that you also need to know, and sometimes you know what pushes their buttons and you purposely push those, but sometimes you can get yourself out of trouble by knowing what not to say, when to keep quiet, when to voice things, and how to phrase things in a way that you tailor your messages to the person you're speaking to. And that's whether it's your roommate or your boss or a coworker, or again, one of these big audiences that you're putting something up on YouTube. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, cool. Okay, so that will take us to our second break. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about advice Dr. Mullin has for students and a funny story. So we're going to be right back after we play Is It All Right by ELO. This is a classic rock band that is in lieu of Dr. Mullin's favorite genre music. So we're going to play that, and then we're going to be right back in about 3-4 minutes. So we'll see you then. I really like that song. We're back. This is KCSB 91.9 FM. Meet Your Mentors is the show going on right now. We are with Dr. Dolly Mullin from the Communication Department here at UCSB. My name is Keon, and you just heard Is It All Right by ELO, a classic rock song. I really liked it a lot. And now we're going to go into a little bit of advice for students. So, Professor, do you have any advice for students here at UCSB?
Yeah, go on all day on that. No. I think one piece of advice that I would give to students is to take a very active role in your own education. And what I mean by that is, on a lot of different levels. On one level, it's just staying on top of things, knowing what's going on around you, not just attending class, but being in the moment, being present there. But there's a particular advantage to doing that, in that even in classes that you may not enjoy that much, if you are involved and trying to figure out something you can take away from it, you're going to get much more out of it. And to try to avoid just lapsing into that copier mentality, we're just copying down what's on the slides and, and then texting in between or whatever else. And we're all prone to doing that from time to time. But when you do that, you don't then get engaged in what you're learning, and then it's much harder to make sense out of it, particularly when you're studying for an exam. The other thing that being really present when you're in class allows you to do is to suss out your professors really well. Because when you can tell what they like, what they dislike, it helps you be much more efficient in studying, because you learn there are certain things that, those are minor details. I'm not going to have to really know those. Yeah. And it just helps to get a sense for that. It's a real skill as you learn to know what you're dealing with. I guess it's part of knowing that audience that we were talking about earlier. Exactly. Too. And then also you end up getting much more out of the experience and things that you can take and use in your life, no matter whether it's a class in your major or outside your major. And then the other part of that is of being present and in the moment. It is also then you don't lose sight of all the dumb little things that can make you feel lost on a big campus, like missing deadlines, not even knowing when your pass is,
Oh, that's bad.
And they'll seem like little things, but it all is part of just staying on top of the experience and making active choices and choosing classes based on what could be interesting and enriching to you, rather than, it's not at a great time of day. Yeah. That sometimes at the time seems important, but later, at least for me, when I look back and I think some of those things, I could have taken advantage of that I didn't. That's what I try to encourage students to do. And, they always tell you to go in and see your professors. That's, of course, important, too. But I think of that as still part of that whole picture of just getting more involved and more attached and interested. And then even some of the things that aren't as interesting may end up becoming interesting to you. And hopefully you'll get a lot more out of it.
Yeah, great advice. Great advice to all the Scout shows. Keep those in mind. And last but not least, do you have any funny stories for us to share today?
Well, there's one, because you did ask me to think about this.
Yeah.
That happened about a year ago in Com 1. So you're talking 500 students in Ivy Theater. It's a little bit ironic because one of the issues I told you that I studied earlier are First Amendment issues with media. And so you may remember or have heard of the Janet Jackson Super Bowl incident, the so-called wardrobe malfunction that happened at that time, and it stirred up a lot of controversy about indecency regulation, and I actually talk about that in my class. Well, the irony is that in front of my own students one day, I had my microphone clipped to my top, which was a kind of a wrap top, a little fold-over area there, and I didn't realize that the microphone had, in fact, pulled open my top.
Oh, no.
So I had my own little wardrobe malfunction that particular day and didn't catch it for a few minutes until I suddenly felt something amiss and and then looked down and went, okay, turned my back. I told this whole class, all right, just hang on for a second, and then fixed it and then came back. And said, all right. And then I thought to myself, okay, what do I do now? And so I just ended up making a joke about it. I just said, well, you got a free show. Not a very good show, but at least you got one. And so they laughed and we laughed. I think the funniest part was, though, is that earlier that quarter I'd been chatting with my TAs, and some of them were following what happens on Yik Yak during class. Yeah. And so since I knew this, right after that happened, I told one of my TAs, I said, I hope you're getting down. What's going on Yik Yak? And that sent the whole rest of the class now laughing, too. And then they were yakking about that. So I was queen of Yik Yak that morning. And we all had a lot of fun over it too. But it just doesn't matter however long I've been teaching now. Since teaching here since the '90s, and still, an incident like that can happen. Then you make the best of it. But we had fun with it. So.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys turned it into like something funny. Yeah, Yik Yak, another social media of communication. Pretty funny.
Yeah, and that was a new one for me last year. I hadn't realized
really?
that was going on, but I got to kind of stay on top of these things.
Yeah. There's a new one every day, honestly.
Yeah, you bet.
You bet. All right. Thank you, Professor. I appreciate that. It was a lot of fun. So thank you for being on the show.
You're welcome. Great.
And this brings us to the end, and we have a playlist of songs coming up for you. It's going to be a mix of classic rock and Celtic music, and our last song for the day is going to be Monday, Monday, very fitting for our Monday right now, 5 a.m. And this is going to be Papas and Mamas, Monday, Monday.
Monday, Monday, so good to me. Monday morning, it was all I hoped it would be. Oh, Monday morning, couldn't guarantee that Monday evening you would still be here with me. Monday, can't trust that day. Monday, sometimes it just turns out that way. Oh, Monday morning, you gave me no warning of what was to be. Oh, Monday, how could you leave and not take me? Every other day, every other day of the week is fine, yeah. But whenever Monday comes, you can find me crying all of the time. Monday, so good to me. Monday morning, it was all I hoped it would be. But Monday morning couldn't guarantee that Monday evening you would still be here with me. Every other day of the week is fine, yeah. But whenever Monday comes, you can find me crying all of the time. Monday, can't trust that day. Monday, it just turns out that way. Oh, Monday, won't go away. Monday.
Yo, everybody, this is KCSB 91.9 FM on the radio. My name is Keon, and you are listening to Meet Your Mentors, where we talk with faculty and staff here at UCSB about who they are, what they do, and what life at UCSB is all about. Just for starters, happy finals week, everyone. Finals are upon us. This is crazy. I am myself drowning in studies, but that's how it goes, and we're all feeling the struggle of the schooling right now. We are being schooled by school right now, but that's okay. That's kind of what finals week is all about, especially at the UCs, where the quarter system is like a rush of blood straight to the head. That was Coldplay reference. I don't even know how that got to my head. Whatever. Anyway, so this is KCSB 91.9 FM, and we just had Dr. Dolly Mullin on the show from the communication department here at UCSB, and we talked about a whole lot of things. Very interesting. I'm happy for those of you who tuned in. Thank you for tuning in, and if you're listening right now, thank you for tuning in. And we have a playlist for you. It's a mix between classic rock and Celtic rock, so we're going to be playing that for you, and we're going to be enjoying the rest of this morning with some classic hit songs and maybe some very nice songs you haven't heard before as well, so it's going to be a lot of fun. It is 5:37 a.m. right now, and this is a good morning. So up next, we're going to play a song that many of you may be very fond of. This is going to be, hold on a second, got it. Pretty Baby by Blondie. Yes, I should have memorized that. Alright, so here it comes.
Stars live in the evening, but the very young need the sun. Pretty baby, you look so heavenly, a neon nebula from under the sun. I was forming, some say I had my chance. The boys were falling like an avalanche. Yeah, yeah, baby, la dolce vita is a magic dance. No one was listening. Pretty baby, petit ingenue, teenage starlet, I fell in love with you. You with the comb. You look okay everywhere. I should have known. You'd look at me and look away. Oh. Pretty baby,
might come true. Run, run, you. Baby, then there wouldn't be a single thing we couldn't do. But we could be married, and then we'd be happy, Oh, wouldn't it be nice? You know, it seems the more we talk about it, it only makes it worse to live without it. But let's talk about it. Wouldn't it be
In the shadow of the moon, she danced in the starlight, whispering a haunting tune to the night. Velvet skirts spun round and round, fire in her stare. In the woods without a sound, no one cared. Through the darkened field entranced, music made her poor heart dance, thinking of a lost romance long ago.
Yo, what's up, everyone? This is KCSB 91.9 FM, and you're listening to Meet Your Mentors. We just had 3 songs for you. The first one was Pretty Baby by by Blondie. The second one was, let's see here, what did we have? Waited at the Window by MTV Ghosts, and the one that you just heard was Shadow of the Moon by Blackmore's Night. Oh, and we also had Wouldn't It Be Nice by the Beach Boys, of course. So, all some good songs. These are our classic rock and Celtic rock playlist songs for the day, because we had Dr. Dolly Mullin on the show from the UCSB Communication Department, and this is the kind of music she's very into, Celtic rock and classic rock, and that's what we have for you today. And as always, this is Meet Your Mentors. We're always on at 5 till 6 a.m. on Mondays. And as I said before, happy finals week. And just to get your finals week kicked off the right way, we're going to play a couple more good songs. This first one is going to be The World at Large. And the song is called Written in Stone. So we'll be right back after this. Hello, everyone. This is KCSB 91.9 FM. My name is Kian Zamuda, and you are listening to Meet Your Mentors. It is 5:55 a.m. in the radio station at this time, and we have just one more song left for you. It's been a very successful show, I would say. It was a lot of fun. We had Dr. Dolly Mullin on the show today from the Department of Communication here at UCSB, and we talked a lot about a bunch of stuff, and it was really cool, a lot of fun. And so I hope you heard that, and if not, it will be available online. So look out for that on YouTube and kcsb.org. And so we have, for our very last song of the day, this is going to be ELO, Mr. Blue Sky. And yeah, this is about it. So we're going to wrap up with this song, and we'll see you next week. So I'm just going to go ahead and do my signing out right now. This is Meet Your Mentors, and my name is Kian Zamuda, and this is me signing out. And as always, go Gauchos. I will see you later.
Why you had to hide away for so long? Where did we go wrong? Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why you had to hide away for so long. Where did we go wrong? Sky, please tell us why you had to hide away for so long. Where did we go wrong? Hey there, Mr. Blue, it's a place to be with you. Look around, see what you do. Everybody smiles at you. Hey there, Mr. Blue, it's a place to be with you. Look around, see what you do. Everybody smiles at you. Why you had to